It's all Marie's fault.
Yeah, it's all good. Of course, I'm just volunteering,
Yeah, right.
like all of you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
it's true.
Do you have the agenda? Did I give you the agenda?
I do. I do have the agenda.
Does everybody have the agenda?
No.
I do.
Bob doesn't? I'll get you one, Bob.
Are you going to be around for this, for the 29th?
Okay, I'm going to call the meeting to order. It's,
Probably,
But,
yes. I won't be here. Okay, I'm leaving the 24th.
20 minutes of, little short of 20 minutes, 18 minutes
I'll
of
be gone for a while.
6 o'clock.
How are you?
First of all, I'd like the members of the board to introduce themselves. We're short, but we have a quorum, so we should be good.
Jean Steiner.
Greg Winston,
Bob Bradley.
Patricia Scarnese. Barbara Dowd.
thank you. We're going to go in order. The only, the first thing that I just wanted to, for the board members, we're going to move the item C, the public historic inventory update, to our next meeting because Miranda wasn't able to be here tonight, and I'd like to be able to review it, and I think that you'd all like to review it before we discuss it. So she has all of the pertinent information, having done the work on it, so I'd like to move that, if it's okay with the board, to our next public hearing, which is going to be March 16th at 5:30 in this room. And moving right along, then, we'll start with the first public hearing, which is AH 2016-01, Notice of Intent to Demolish a Structure of over 100 years, which has been received for a property located at 19 Park Place. That's otherwise known as Ocean Grove Campgrounds, map 6B, parcel L55. It's in the RH2 zone. And pursuant to the code of the Town of Harwich 131-8, the applicant proposes a 100% demolition of a circa 1900s two-story single-family home. Owner William Eldridge, applied by owner and applicant. And in your files, you should have that copy. Does everyone have a copy? Does everyone have the information that they need? There's some photographs of the existing structure. And I will open it to the board for discussion. Once again, this is public hearing HH 2016. It's a notice. It's an application for demolish. This is a property that is listed on the Town of Harwich Historic Inventory. It is listed. And it's, let's see here. Who is oh, there.
Yes.
Yes, sir. I know who you are, but
Sure.
I'll let you introduce yourself.
Sure. For the record, my name is Dale Nikila, and I was hired by Bill and Christine Eldridge. I'm the owner of Encore Construction, and we're the design-build company who's going to be doing the work for them.
Okay.
If I could say, the original intent when I met with them was to remodel the structure. But after spending a considerable amount of time looking into what some of the problems with the existing structure are in regards to the condition of the foundation, condition of the exterior walls, condition of the floor systems, both first and second floor, they asked me then to take a look at it in terms of, you know, what the cost would be to actually demolish it and to put up a new house. So that kind of led us down the road to where we are today. So, and I just wanted to point out that, you know, their original intent was to try to save the property, but there are just a lot of structural issues and code issues with it. They actually owned the house next door for many, many years, and then just recently bought this house.
Okay, thank you.
And I think if I could also just point out, I think one of the other issues there is that I'm sure everybody's aware of how tight it is down in the campground areas. And I think to try to even, the practicality or feasibility of trying to move this house off that property is gonna be very, very difficult. I really think it would have to be taken down in order to do that, because the roads are so tight down there.
Okay. That wasn't. Dale, I guess the first question that I would ask you is, you had mentioned something about moving the building. Was that something that they had entertained, moving the building?
No, I'm just saying, if somebody wanted to try to use it for another purpose or whatever, as it now currently exists, I think it would be almost impossible to move it without taking it apart. Again, because it's so tight down there. In other words, you couldn't put it on a truck and cart it off someplace and use it on another site.
Okay, I was down there this afternoon, actually, just to review the property and be familiar with the information that we were being provided with tonight. As the fact stands, the property is considered in the historic inventory. And you may probably be aware that over the course of time, the Board of Selectmen has asked this board more than once to look into the historical significance of what is referred to as Ocean Grove and the campgrounds. And we've discussed it on numerous occasions, and we've had some interest. The town still has some interest, but we haven't had a lot of interest in the neighborhood itself. But we're trying to be very careful about, how things are being treated down there in that area. So this is one of those properties that obviously will be scrutinized by the board, because as we lose them one by one, they'll never be replaced again. And because what's interesting about the area, of course, is that the zoning is so tight, which is obviously what you're concerned about.
Right.
So, I don't know, I know that some of the members of the board are familiar with this property. I was there today. I believe Gene Steiner was there today.
I was there, yes.
Do I have anyone that would like to initiate the conversation as to what your thoughts might be on this particular project?
I'll start.
Go ahead.
Because I thought it was a charming house. I could see where, and I'm not an architect, but I could see where parts had been added on. I thought it seemed iconic of many of the homes that you would see in that area. It looked like you could see some rot on various corners, but there didn't, I walked around it and peeked in the windows, but there didn't appear to be a lot of that. I mean, you could see that some work had been done probably to start a restoration on the inside. The plasterboard was off the walls, et cetera.
No, actually, I think what happened there is they had quite a few leaks, and then there was quite a bit of mold and mildew that was built up on the inside of the house. So that's why they decided to gut it, to try to salvage what they could. And this was really before they decided to go with a new home, when they were still considering remodeling it. But there is quite a bit of rot when you walk around the outside. There's actually, I don't know if you noticed, there's a small bulkhead there where you can go underneath, which I've been underneath there. And in the box or the sill of the house, this looks like there's been some carpenter ant damage or termite damage.
Right.
And, and as I said, if inside the house too, just walking around, the floors are considerably out of level. It's an old house.
That is the nature of old houses.
Yeah.
And a new house, were it to be built there, would have to be built on that footprint. Is that
Exactly.
correct?
Yeah, we had to be very careful about the design of the new house. So we tried to design the new house to have a lot of the characteristics of the existing house. But there are also some characteristics of the existing house that are problematic when it comes to code, like the big eaves, the overhangs on the second floor that look really nice, but from a wind code standpoint are really hard to build with a new home.
Okay. Did they look at a dollar for dollar kind of comparison?
We did. Yeah, and really, it came out to almost, the same, when you look at remodeling versus building new. And as I said, there are a lot of problems that would have to be dealt with on the remodel, particularly in terms of getting a foundation under there. which is something that I think they want to do, obviously, to make it more practical, to have mechanicals, you know, like HVAC and hot water and electric and so forth. But also just in long-term, you know, fees or the long-term viability of the house itself. I mean, I think as it's standing right now, over time, it's just going to kind of rot away, you know, unless the foundation's put under it. Because as you can see from the photos, all four sides are sitting right on the ground right now. You know, which just in terms of health of a house is not good.
So are you proposing a house which will stand off the ground higher than the
Yeah.
current level?
Yeah, so building code requires that we be at least 8 inches from grade, and so that's our goal, is to be 8 inches from grade.
You don't have any drawings suggesting what you're doing?
No, no.
Of course, if we keep the old house, we don't have to change the height.
You would have to change the height, because the house,
Don't have to.
I'm just
Yeah.
saying, well, to put a foundation on it, you'd have to change the height, because the house would have to be lifted
And then put back down.
and put back down, but again, it's gonna be at least 8 inches higher than it is now. So code requires that there be 8 inches of exposed foundation between the grade and the bottom,
The code requires it if you build a new house.
or put a foundation on your house.
If you're repairing, well, I don't want to get into this right now.
I think one of the things that has been somewhat indigenous to this particular neighborhood is, before we were getting so many requests for demolition, I know Mr. Gisil and a few other people have made a lot of money down there putting foundations under houses in that neighborhood. Just to use one name that I was familiar with. And this, in my opinion, iconic house is, I mean, it's sort of a combination between a bungalow, which I guess is what you'd have to describe it as, but it almost looks a little bit like some kind of a Bavarian chalet. It has a lot of character. It's a very interesting looking house. And having walked around it today, I concur that it needs a foundation. I also concur that, you know, you have rather tight parameters, but that's, once again, the nature of the neighborhood. Pat, do you have any thoughts on this?
You said something to the effect of where the cost for demo and the cost of remodeling was about the same,
Mm-hmm.
and you're still choosing to demo it?
Well, yes, because even with a remodel, they're not gonna be able to get on the inside what they want, you know, in terms of the size of the bedrooms and so forth. Because when we do the new home is actually gonna be a little bit bigger on the second floor than it currently is. So the bedroom space up there is gonna be bigger than what the existing home would offer.
Do you have drawings of that new home?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I didn't know
think there's
I didn't
some-
know they were required for this process, so.
No,
They're
they're not required,
Okay.
but
Might have been helpful. if-
they were presented, and here they are.
Mm.
That's not a construction drawing.
Oh, I'm just saying this is.
Well, I have no more questions.
You said there was structural damage. Are you only talking about the dry rot around the bottom?
Well, there's dry rot around the bottom, but also they put some beams on the inside. At some point, if you notice, or if you refer to the photos that I have there, there's particularly one new beam that was put in on the first floor to support part of the second floor, and that beam is nowhere near to code. So again, there's also, as they put in the narrative here, you know, the existing stairwell is nowhere near code. I mean, it doesn't, you know, have the width that you need for a modern staircase. The studding on the walls is so close together that there's no way you could get the insulation up to code, because there's just so much wood in the walls themselves. So again, it presents a lot of issues in terms of bringing it up to code.
Are you talking about the insulation upstairs?
First floor and second floor.
So you're talking basically that the framing.
In the walls.
The framing, as it exists, doesn't allow for enough
That's right.
insulation.
Yeah,
Which
because
is
the studs are so wide and,
probably
the
common
bays
for
are small.
most houses of that age,
Mm.
particularly in that neighborhood.
yeah.
Barbara?
I was around the house today again, and I viewed it maybe 3 or 4 different times, and I really feel like it's a very charming old house. And I think if the front, all the little additions, if they were taken off and putting maybe a porch, so that the porch would have the same character as the roof line, it would be just a lovely house. It's bungalow to me, bungalow type
Yeah.
house.
That's what hit me right away.
Well, if I could just mention too, in terms of iconic, I mean, I think it's, you might call it iconic, I'd kind of call it quirky myself, because it's not really a Cape-style home at all. In other words, if I'm, looking at a home in terms of the architecture of what I would think is a traditional Cape Cod home, I mean, it's definitely not a traditional Cape Cod home.
Well, it's not a traditional Cape Cod home, perhaps, but it's very iconic of the campground sensibilities. It's been pretty badly mangled, but I think it could be brought back to probably what it was 100 years ago. It's on the list.
So,
I
Go ahead.
don't think, well, it's just, old houses need repair, they need work, they need replacement parts. There's nothing new about that. We hit this every time we have a meeting. I think that the fact this is on the survey,
see,
I haven't seen it yet myself because I've had some problems the last couple of weeks, but
So when you mention it's on the survey, is that particular home, or is it in the neighborhood?
no, that particular home.
That particular
See, what
home.
happens is when someone comes in and files for an application for a demolition, has to go into the building department. The building department has to refer to the historical inventory. And if they find that the real estate or the building or any portion of the real estate is in the historical inventory, then it has to come to the Historic District Commission. Basically, it's our job to oversee and to protect the town's historic structures from overall demolition. So basically, what the board has are just two choices. We have the choice to invoke the 365-day demolition delay bylaw. And the reason for the demolition delay bylaw is to give people a chance to think twice about a piece of real estate that they may have thought they didn't want to invest the money into, and then the town loses it. And basically, and from what I'm hearing from the board tonight, it's not sounding like they're going to give you an overwhelming response for demolition, but we could take a vote. But basically, what we have to do is we have to get a motion on the table first. So, if this is anyone interested in further discussing the property?
I just have one question.
Sure.
And I understand what you're saying about not being able to insulate up to standard, but it seems to me, just from personal experience, when you got a house back to the walls, to the studs, you have a lot of flexibility within that floor plan to build things the way you would like them to be in a more contemporary fashion. I think what we're concerned about is the streetscape and how we keep the continuity of that.
Yeah, and I think in general what you're saying is correct, but there are a lot of variances that were issued by the Board of Health for this property as well. So there's a lot of restrictions in terms of what can be done, whether it be through remodel or building new. So, as I said, one of the things that they wanted to, or were hoping to do, is you have a little bit larger rooms on the second floor, so there's more bedroom space. I don't know if you've been in there, but the rooms are very small. I mean, actually, a few of the bedrooms don't even qualify now as bedrooms under the Board of Health regulations. So, one of the things they wanted to do is increase the size of the second floor so they could actually have bedrooms that met code, met the Board of Health codes. So that was part of what the goal was, with the new structure.
we don't really involve ourselves with the interiors, but, and I know you know that, Gene, but the owners know what the house is, and while it's as it is. It's not breaking any codes. It only breaks codes when you change it. And I think they knew what they have. They're trying now to change it, which means that they're beginning to change the relationship of the building to the site and so forth. My concern for myself is that I haven't really seen this property. I'm sorry, I apologize for that, but I would like to get down there. And I think well, I think I'm just going to suggest, I'm not making a motion right now, but I'd like to suggest that we consider imposing the restriction until, for a month, anyway. And I think you have to do it for a year.
Okay.
So basically, a continuance is what you're
Continuance.
referring to?
We could continue the hearing to the next monthly hearing.
You don't have to impose anything right now.
Basically, we had three options. The board has three options.
We had two.
Two options, but, well, technically, we can extend the hearing for 1 month. What the board has done in the past is to invoke the demolition delay and allow that extension of 30 days so that you can deduct that from the 365 days. That's been done in the past. Or the board has the option, obviously, of making a motion to demolish. So at this point in time, if you're happy with the information that you've received from the applicant or the representative of the applicant, then I will entertain a motion one way or another. And Bob, if you want, you may go ahead and make the motion.
Well, I'd like to make a motion that we continue the hearing.
All right.
I'll second.
All right, now may I just ask a question? Would you like to continue the hearing without invoking the 365 day?
Without invoking it.
All right. So in that case, you have, if that were to pass.
Unless you want us to invoke it.
No, I prefer you don't.
Okay.
I'd
Well,
rather
this-
just get a continuance.
basically what this does is
Particularly, it'd give you a chance to go down there and look at the property.
I think that out of the board members that are sitting here at the table tonight, everyone but Bob has seen the property. But we also don't have a full board tonight, so it might be to your advantage to go with the continuation without invoking the 365-day demolition delay. That seems to be the general consensus. So do you want to go ahead and make that motion?
I just thought I did.
All right.
I seconded.
Oh, and you seconded, okay. I'm sorry, okay, so it's been made, the motion's been made and seconded, that we allow this to come back before this board on the 17th of March in this room, which would be the next public hearing. And at that point in time, whatever.
16th or 17th?
I have the 16th. I just wrote a note real quick. That doesn't mean that I'm absolutely accurate, but here we go.
Could we,
Wednesday's the 16th, yes. Okay, then I'll take a vote on that. All those in favor of putting this forward to the next agenda?
Aye.
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 Okay, it's a motion and has carried. Thank you.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Could I
Thank
ask
you.
you,
Yeah.
could we give you a call and have somebody there?
Sure.
When maybe we could make it, instead of wandering around the street, just make an
Yeah.
appointment.
If you want,
Yeah, definitely, no,
If you want
I
Dale-
think it'd be, I think it'd be good for you to walk through the house.
Okay,
Again, just so you could see some of the items that, I'm referring to in my narrative here.
okay, all right.
if you want to just give your contact information to Maria, just make sure we have it.
I'll
So
do
it's
that.
on the,
Oh, is
Yeah,
it?
it's on the letterhead.
We're good. All right, I thank you very much.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Then Moran can see everybody else.
That makes sense. Okay. All right, then we'll move right along to the next one.
It's on here.
Okay, the next item on the agenda. Which is HH 2016-02. It's a notice of intent to demolish a structure of over 100 years. It's been received for the property at 1004 Route 28, map 25, parcel B1, in the CH1 zone. The applicant proposes to demolish the barn only. The property is listed on the historic property inventory list and on the Massachusetts Historical Survey website, which is MACRIS. The home is described as circa 1835 and is an elegant example of a Greek Revival architecture with minimal setback from the street. Basically, we are getting some description of the home. The description of the barn is actually what's more important, because it's the barn that they're requesting to demolish. And the application is made by Janine and Kenneth Stefano, is that correct?
Yes,
I pronounced that right?
Di Stefano.
Di Stefano.
Yep.
Di Stefano, okay. Once again, board members, you all have a packet in front of you showing the lot, and I believe you should have a photograph of showing the barn. The barn is typically known as a salt box barn. And I will preface this, this is the kind of thing that comes before the board all the time, and the very first things that most people say to the board are, it's rotted, or it's moldy, or it's full of mildew. So all of those items don't really come into our purview. We're looking at the historic significance of the structure itself.
Sure.
I'll let you go ahead. Janine?
Yes. And if I could use it as a barn, that would be great, but I'm in the water recharge area, so I'm not allowed any livestock. I can't use it as a, to drive in my car, because as you can see, it's a wood floor and broken in many spots. But I do have, I don't plan on touching the historical house. And I have, an old cottage on the side that I have a lot more repairs to do on the other buildings as well, and I've been doing them all along. So our intent was to take down the barn and put in a structure that would be conforming, because the barn at this time is not conforming. It's too close to the lot line. But basically, almost the same footprint, 24 by 24. I didn't realize you needed the house plans, but it won't have a basement, because I have a leaching field behind it, so I can't have a full basement. I have to have slab on grade for any structure that I build there. But as you can see, some of the beams are rotted and so forth, and the flooring, and if it didn't have boulders holding it up in certain places, I mean, it would be quite expensive to repair. So I ask that you let us take it down and build a new structure and make the property look, nicer. Actually, the house that I intend to build in place of that will look more like the antique structure in the front. It will carry the same coloring and, not the elaborate woodwork, but we would like to try to keep it more natural to the other homes there. So.
It's primarily the jurisdiction of our board to understand the historic significance of the structure in question. We have, in the past, worked with places to help in a redefinition of something that's going to be removed because of the effect that it has in the neighborhood. But most often, our board doesn't have any jurisdiction over what's going to be built in the place of the historic structure.
Yeah.
So the people have provided us with plans and photographs, but
Yeah.
mostly what we have to be concerned with is what exists and what wouldn't exist if it was demolished. I'll start over with Jean, and then we just go around and I'll get your opinions as to what your thoughts are.
Well, I thought it was a great-looking barn. And I
yeah.
think it must have been spectacular in its day.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I like the fact that you can see it from the street. As you're driving down Route 28, you see it sort of tucked back there, and it gives you a sense of how it related to the house that you
Years
use as
ago,
the
yeah.
main building, which is a beautiful piece of property.
It is, and that will stay just like it is.
Yeah.
And, as you can see, I put the roof on. There's an old barn section of the cottage, and then the other section is probably from the 50s, and it had, it had some, but that has a foundation, and it could be brought back to life and so forth. But also with the mixed use that they did grant me, the town at the planning board meeting, the last one. There's going to be a lot of parking around that building as well, so their choice is, having the parking out in the back of the property.
Parking in the back?
Yeah,
or-
in the back of, what is the barn. I believe you should have,
We do.
you do, the plans
Proposed.
there. Yeah. There's
The
two,
right-hand
there's-
side of the.
There was a proposed, and one side's a proposed and one side's what's there now.
So you'd have 5 parking spaces there.
In the back. A little bit more. Each dwelling will have their own. I believe we have 13 altogether, and a couple out front on the side.
Oh, I see.
And as I said, it's not useful in this day and time.
Janine, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I'm looking at this, it says proposed conditions plan by Moran Engineering.
Yep.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't this building on I would say the north or the backside of the lot, isn't that already existing? It says proposed one-bedroom residential unit?
That's the barn.
To the left-hand side or the?
No, I'm looking
Oh.
from the street straight to the back. Behind,
Yeah.
behind the barn, which is highlighted, there's a building.
Yeah,
Doesn't that exist currently?
yes, it does.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just in viewing this myself this afternoon, one of the things that caught my eye was the nature of the streetscape on the opposite side of the street. A very similar, not so much density, but a very similar property. Beautiful home, beautifully maintained, and a barn of similar age, once again, also maintained, opposite side of the street. So you'd be facing this property that I was discussing, or that I caught my eye. Bob, what are your thoughts?
Well, I'm gonna pass right now. Give me a few minutes.
Okay. Pat?
I don't know what to, other than if the original building is really as rotted as proposed, but, I don't know, there's a lot of buildings on that piece of property. I don't know.
Well, what we have here is which is not under our jurisdiction, but we have a development of several apartments, units.
Right. And what you're looking at here, I just wanted to clarify that fact that structure, because having been there this afternoon, it looked to me that was a relatively new structure, that furthest back structure that I asked you about.
Actually.
And you said that does exist.
Yeah, that was probably 80s maybe. We re-sided and put new windows in there. That's why it looks pretty good. That structure has no plumbing or water, but we put the septic to it, and we did put water line over to the house, so it could be a structure. The town had approved 3 residential dwellings and the commercial building up front, which is, for the CH1 zone. But because I was in the water recharge area, I was, I'm under the jurisdiction of the many factors, with the amount of bedrooms and so forth.
Once again,
Well-
most of that is
Yeah,
completely
I've read
out of our
it, yeah.
jurisdiction. Go ahead, Bob.
Well, I was just gonna say that, it's out of our jurisdiction. She's not actively using the barn as is, I don't think. Is
Just
that
for
true?
storage, right, and, it's really not even good for that, because it's leaking water in one of the
Yeah,
beams.
well, you gotta take care of a building, that's the
Yeah.
problem we hit with everybody who comes here.
Well, I just don't know, we're letting carpenters up there, whether it's safe for them,
They'll manage.
yeah.
I think that, there's no interest in the building, as far as I can see. I would.
Before you make any,
I hate to say, to pass on this. I mean, this is one of those structures that our charge is to save these things, and that's what the town has asked us to do. And I have a feeling that this will just deteriorate if we leave it there as is now. That's what I see.
Barbara, did you want to weigh in on this?
I haven't seen the building.
You haven't?
I'm so sorry, I really haven't. So I really cannot comment. I would like to look at it, though, and go walk around it.
Could I make some comment?
Your name, sir?
Barry.
I'm
yes.
Barry Knowles. I have the property to the east, right next door.
Okay.
So I have a very good view of this barn, and I've known it forever. The previous owner, Gene Fulton, had the back, and the building in the back, you say, which is newer, that was her art studio. This building that's the subject of this hearing tonight was just storage, and if you look at it, it has been altered over the years. I mean, it doesn't have any of the original appearance from the front. It has these double doors. At one point, it had been used as a garage, so all the old sliding doors, whatever, are gone. And it is clearly, as typical of these old buildings, they're just built, the sills are just sitting on the ground, so there's a lot of rot. So to repair it and use it as storage would be a big deal. I have a barn on my property, number 1006, and I had new sills put under it and new siding because I wanted to save it, but it costs a fortune, and you still can't use it as a dwelling by any means. You know, it's impossible because of the unevenness and so on. So I'm definitely in favor of the demolishing this and replace. It's too close to the sideline now. The new building would meet the sideline restrictions, and if it's sensitive, as I've seen the plans, if it's sensitive to the original architecture, I think it would be an improvement. You mentioned the property across the street, O'Brien, the two sisters' house. They don't have a barn similar to this. It's just really more of a shed. It's much smaller. It's nowhere near this size.
I just
Yeah.
viewed it from the street.
Yeah, I mean,
I
it-
didn't do any research on
Yeah.
that, I just.
And, you know, they're attractive. My old building is probably 1806, and the barn is to the right, and I really like the appearance of it, but I poured money into it for not much reason, because it can only be used for storage.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. Just for the record, I just wanted to get your name. I know our video came out very good over there at Channel 18, but I could not hear the audio from last month's hearing. Your name again, sir?
Oh, my name is Barry Knowles.
Knowles? Okay, thank you.
1006.
Okay. Barbara, you haven't seen the property.
No.
Okay,
like
then
to
I guess
see
I'm going to come back to Jean and see what your thoughts are relative to a motion. We have options, just as we had or have with any application. We have the demolition approval, we have the demolition delay, or we have what we just invoked, which is the 30 days to allow the full board to inspect the real estate. I'll entertain a motion from anyone on any one of those possibilities.
I would move that we allow a 30-day delay or continuance, whatever you want to call it, so that the other members can see. I think it would be important for both Gail and Bob and Miranda to have a chance to look at it. And maybe we could do the same thing, make an appointment. It was very
Either way,
helpful to
yeah,
walk
yeah,
through it, and
yeah.
that was great. So maybe we could do the same thing for that.
Generally,
Second.
you'd second that, okay. The motion has been made and seconded that we're going to take 30 days to allow the full board to inspect the real estate. In the meantime, any decisions that you may make to alter your application could be accepted at the building department. And I will ask for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. We'll put this, we're going to have a busy meeting next month. We'll put this on our agenda for the 16th. And it should follow in sequence. I'm not sure if we have something already on the agenda.
No, I
But
have
if it's
not.
not, then it'll follow in sequence, so it'll be the second item on the agenda.
Very
And I
good.
thank you for the presentation, and I thank you for the option for allowing us to see the property.
Sure.
You met us there this afternoon, and we
Oh, okay.
luckily
No, and
met you.
I had shoveled a pathway for you, but nobody came.
It was melting as fast as
Yeah,
you were
I know.
shoveling.
Thank
I
you.
thank you very much. Okay, back to the agenda. Once again, just a reminder, I had suggested, but I didn't ask for the opinion of the board. But I'm assuming that that it all is in agreement that we will work on this historic inventory when it's presented to us. It's listed as item C, but we don't have enough information, in my opinion, to act on it now. Is that agreeable to all members?
Yes.
All right. And then the next item that's on the agenda, I'm going to have to ask for some help, and I'm not sure, but I was not able to be at the last hearing, so I'm not exactly sure what applications for CPC funds and changes proposed to this application. If anyone is knowledgeable about what this is all about, that could enlighten me.
What, say it again?
Well, it says here that, under reports and briefings, applications for CPC funds and changes to the proposed application. I guess there was some question about the application for CPC, and anyone that's filing an application, the procedure for the application had some questions. I'm not exactly sure what those questions are.
I don't know what he's referring to.
It's the item number 2 on the agenda.
Well, where are the proposed changes?
Well, that's what I'm asking for some help with, because I wasn't in attendance at the last meeting. I was trying to review the video from Channel 18, and I had some problems with the audio, and Marie has not finished the minutes yet, so I'm not,
Well, there was an issue about the historic funds going through the historic commission for support.
uh-huh.
That was one thing that was being discussed, but of course that didn't happen. I don't know of anything else. I mean, who made this up?
Well, basically, the public hearings were as they came in, and then this was carried forward from the last agenda. Once again,
I just come from Marie?
yes.
Well, if you'd like, I'll talk to her tomorrow about it, but I don't know. I think it has to do with the problem of different entities applying for historic funds without the purview, or without allowing the historic commission to review the application. I think that's what.
You're shaking something in my mind. I think I remember hearing about this. So if you wouldn't mind discussing that, then bringing that back to our attention and clarifying it, that way we can work on it.
I think, I'm just guessing, but I think that's what.
That makes sense, because I asked her what it was too.
Okay. She was oblivious at that moment. Well, she has an
That
awful lot on her,
that makes
a lot on her
sense.
mind these last few weeks.
Really?
Yeah, I know.
Anyway, I think that's the only thing I can think of, because the issue was coming up with the library.
Right. That's why I'm thinking that it had something to do with the library. Just before we, A seems to come in line with B. We have some correspondence that's come in from King, I'm sorry, we have correspondence that's come forward from Sally and Lou Urbano relative to Captain's Row, Hatch, Habitat, all of the above. And all of them fall into the agenda in different places. So I guess what I would ask is, does every board member have this letter titled Hygiene?
Yes, she sent it to me. And I did send it to Gail, but I think she just made copies of it because
I have it
the
too.
server
I have
seems to have been down for the last couple of days.
Don't you, you got it.
Yeah, I apologize to anyone in the audience, but we have had a problem. If we didn't actually physically come into the office and pick up this hard copies, we couldn't download from the from the server. Yes, ma'am.
Just that they're away, but you should be back for the 29th.
You know what, if you can give me just a second, there may be a copy over here.
Looking for a copy of that letter?
I am.
That Lou,
Is there an extra copy?
I do.
Okay. This letter, I just got this in my packet. I haven't even read this myself, so I have no idea.
So essentially, Sally was saying, just a little bit of background information. Apparently, I don't have mine. I gave it to Marie to make copies, so. Talking about Ed Bergen at Mass Historic and Sarah Kirchhoff, who's going to hopefully make a site visit to Captain's Row. And I guess there's some concern that some of the activity around the 97 Main Street property may be in conflict with the whole Captain's Row development and how it's perceived, because it may. If-
Pass them down to
Yeah, I don't, this is the first I had seen of it, so.
Has this got to do with the idea that the funds from the CPC would be expended on destroying the historic building, demolishing and
That's not what I took away from this. It was more that if there was multiple housing to be built, it may diminish the, I'm looking for the intensity of sea captains' homes along what is being proposed as Captain's Row. That's what I took away from it. And that also there's a meeting at the Board of Selectmen on the 29th, where they're gonna look for funds to buy the building, apparently.
Well, that's what, somebody called me the other day, and I wasn't paying too much attention, but somebody has said that the conflict between, and I may be getting this view, that the conflict between the funds from the same source, the CPC, would be being used to destroy something that the CPC funds are supposed to be supporting. In other words, the historic Chase House
Right.
can be restored with CPC funds, which is an application which the Urbanos are putting in. And the Hetch people are putting in an application to take funds to demolish the building. So one wants funds from the CPC to preserve it, and one wants funds from the CPC to demolish it. I think that's what this is boiling down to. The other issue that I understood anyway was that the Hetch application is now taking all the land from the Chase House and is crowding the value of the Chase House by doing that.
I got some sense of that.
Yeah, so there's something.
Yeah.
May I interrupt for just a moment? I just wanted to
By
introduce
the way, the barn was involved.
Gail Carroll, who's just walked in. She's a member of the board who was late. We knew she was going to be late. We're glad she's joining us now.
I apologize.
We've gotten through the two public hearings. Both public hearings have been recessed until our next date, which is March 16th. So we've taken no action relative to either of the items that were first on the agenda, both coming back to us on March 16th. Okay, just as following along here, I have someone stepping to the podium. You are, and
I'm
representing who?
I'm Susan Johnson, and I'm with Hetch.
Okay,
And I
Susan.
just want to clarify the point that you just said. And actually, I can probably clarify a lot for you here.
Okay.
Hetch is not going to CPC for any funds to demolish the Chase House. I'm not sure where that came from.
I may have it wrong. I said,
Yes,
I
you-
said I
you-
didn't know.
That's inaccurate. We actually are here, it's a little bit later in the agenda, but I just wanted to address that issue. We also had a conversation with Phil Burgeon, not me personally, but one of our representatives who isn't here, but I'm going to paraphrase that, and I can get this in writing. And he is with the Mass Historic, just so everybody knows who he is. He's referenced in this letter, I believe. He indicated that anything done to the face, the facade of the street, the integrity of the neighborhood, would not be interrupted in terms of making this become a historic neighborhood if they so chose to go down that road. What they have done before and what they can do is they can exclude homes from a historic district. And the nature of the proposal that Hedge and Habitat have could be considered an exclusion to that if this historic commission so chose to do that. So that's another clarification I want to make. You have other things on the agenda? I can
You know
come back.
what's going to lead us right back to you, if you have further information that you'd like to discuss at this time, I give you permission to go so.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
So, so we're here, I'm here with Habitat as well, and Hedge owns the Chase home. We have had the demo delay that expired in November. We have done what we feel is everything in our power not to demo the house, and we have no intention of demoing that property at this time whatsoever at all. As a matter of fact, I think we've come up with a very good solution that helps the neighborhood, it helps the historic, helps build affordable homes, and it helps the town of Harwich. So what our proposal is, or what we're working towards, is Habitat coming in and purchasing a portion of the two properties together, 93 and 97. They would purchase the back half of the property. I don't have details in terms of the acreage and so on. We haven't gotten that far yet. And what we would do, Hedge would maintain ownership of the Chase house and the little ranch house that's there now, which is a 1950s little ranch. And we would issue an RFP for a historic preservation of the Chase home. So what this would enable us to do is offer the Chase home at a below market rate to an interested organization or possibly individual who would be able to preserve the home. So that is where we are with this proposal now. Did I miss anything?
Yes, Ralph Diamond, I believe.
Initially, when at another meeting, you said that, I believe that you all said that the entire property was going to be a 40B project, would be included in the 40B project. Are you changing that now?
Absolutely not. So the whole project would be a 40B. I'm going to let Ladara speak on it. She's the expert in 40B.
Okay, if you just give us your name again, please.
My name is Lee Darazola. I work with Habitat for Humanity. And the process, if you don't mind, can I start sort of from the beginning? Because I did submit our
Please do.
materials.
It would help,
Okay.
it would help everyone, I think, understand what we're,
Great.
I mean, we can go back to the very beginning, but why don't you start at your beginning?
Do you want to sit up?
We'll just get this much, it's on the agenda,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah.
People can hear better from back here.
Oh, I think the two of us, it's easier at the table.
Oh, there's a mic there.
Yeah.
Okay. Is that a mic?
We've got the green light. Just sometimes it's easier to be in tandem here. We very much work as a team.
Oh, so you're both with Hedge,
We are both with Habitat.
with Habitat, and I'm sorry, your name's?
I'm Vicki Goldsmith, I'm the director of
Hi,
the local
Vicki.
Habitat for Humanity. Hi,
Okay.
Vic, how are you?
Okay. As I said, my name is Lee Darazola. I work on the Habitat Land Acquisition and Permitting team. We're here in a way, an informal basis as a courtesy to bring you folks up to speed on what we're proposing. We see our proposal as an affordable housing proposal. I mean, it is. We are looking to create deed-restricted affordable housing, but as there is this connection with the Chase home, we wanted to be open about our plans and to bring them so people knew what we were looking at. We are working cooperatively and in collaboration with Hetch. We are working on a memo of understanding. It is for 93 and 97 Main Street, approximately 2.5 acres. What Habitat is looking at is the back portion. We would use Mass General Law, Chapter 40B, which is affordable housing permitting. We would take that 2.5 acres that would be subject to the 40B. We would use the 40B mechanism to create a different subdivision, different lots, so that we could then purchase the back portion and
Excuse me,
Hetch.
do you have a plan for this?
We submitted the materials. We do not yet have engineering plans. That is one of the things that we are asking the town for, is, you know, show of support so that we can then go and invest those
Well, it's
funds.
hard to visualize this sort of thing when, you know, you're talking 2.5 acres and you're talking of somehow dealing with the land in certain ways. I don't even understand it myself, so.
I think
It would be nice if, we had a
Oh,
site
of
plan.
course, and we are very happy, I mean, that is our
I'm sure
process.
you'll be happy, but what I would like to know is why we're doing this now when I have no idea what you're talking about that way. I'm sure that these people don't understand the site.
Well, I think, if I may clarify, we have people in the room. I think what's important is for all of us to be educated as to what Habitat and Hetch's plans may be. And also, I think it's important for Habitat and Hetch to understand what the plans are with the residents of the Captain's Row potential historic district that has been in the works for a long time, going back many years. It sort of went to sleep for a little while, but it's coming back with a lot of enthusiasm. So I think if we can listen to what you have to say briefly, and what anyone that has to say relative to Captain's Row and the historic district briefly, then obviously we can get it on our agenda and maybe have a better understanding when everybody has a plan.
Exactly. This is the beginning of a conversation. We just wanted to bring people in the loop. Sometimes inadvertently there's misinformation, so we just wanted to be here to tell you where we are in the planning process, what we're envisioning. Again, as a courtesy and informal, we're not requesting, there's no real jurisdiction, so we're not requesting any kind of determination.
Just an informational.
Exactly.
That's it.
Yep. And so informationally, again, we're looking at that 2.5 acres using Mass General Law, Chapter 40B. We would not be working on the street lots. We would be behind the Chase home, the barn, and that existing ranch dwelling. Our subdivision road would most likely, and again, I mean, we're in the beginning planning stages, come down the side, I'm getting east and west. West. Come down the west side of those two lots, so furthest away from the Chase home. We, would be constructing Habitat for Humanity, new construction homes in the back. They would be deed restricted in perpetuity for low to moderate income home buyers. What that allows, or why we are, so Hetch remains in control. They keep ownership of those two front lots, the Chase home and the ranch home. It is Hetch's intention, as you heard from Susan, to issue a request for proposal at the property, the Chase home, has been on the market since last spring, I believe, and no one has purchased it. I mean, it's been available. This was another solution we were looking at. So one of the pieces of this is that we then purchase a back, and Hetch can then issue this RFP with the requirement of historic preservation. So this is why we see multiple benefits, housing and historic. And we are looking to the Harwich Affordable Housing Fund. So this is housing money that we're requesting from the Board of Selectmen to purchase this back portion. It is not CPC funds. And I think that's sort of briefly. Do you have anything to add, Vicki? Yep.
Yeah, just a couple of things. So I think that obviously our mission relates to affordable homes. So we're achieving affordable homes in the back portion of the state, where we think it also has the effect of perhaps helping the historic goal is, frankly, for everyone who wants to preserve that home. The real challenge isn't opposing what we're doing or making the demolition delay go on and on and on, but ultimately to find a developer for whom it's worthwhile and attractive to fix up that home, to invest funds, if they're attracting grants funds, to have a purpose, a reason, an affordable way to develop it. And if by purchasing the back portion, that's some funds into Hatch for selling off the back portion of the site, allows them to lower the price being proposed for the front portion, that makes it more affordable for an historic developer to do that, because ultimately that house, to my mind, will only be preserved
if it is an attractive proposition for someone who loves the idea of owning and maintaining a historic home. So we see this makes that more possible for Hetch to make that a more attractive proposition, and that's where we think it can work with instead of against the historic goal. So the funds that we are going for are purely housing funds to be used in the back portion of the site. In terms of the 40B, I know where Ralph's question is, but with a, say we were able to build 6 homes there, and then the 2 homes, those would be the affordable homes. The 40B law allows you to subdivide in creative ways, getting variances, and the 2 front homes would be considered the market rate, which allows that property to be developed and transferred in a more market rate kind of way without affordability restrictions. So we did a sort of deal like this in Falmouth, where there was someone who was willing to give us property, but they had promised someone in the family that they would maintain a lot always to have a house, you know, for their family. And so we were able to create 4 affordable lots there. When we went through the Zoning Board of Appeals, we delineated that as part of this development, there was 1 market rate lot that would stay with this owner, and that was well within the 40B law, 4 affordable homes, 1 market rate. We didn't actually develop, do anything with that piece, that part of the lot that was considered market rate, but in that way it was preserved for the seller, kind of similar in a way to Hetch, but very different scenario. And we were able to go ahead with our 4 affordable homes, but using 40B, we were able to subdivide for that purpose. So it's more similar to that than the idea that we're using the funds to develop or demolish in any way Hetch.
Ralph, may I ask you quickly, I don't have any other representatives of the Captain's Row group here. Are you formally, do you know, is there a Friends of or an organization that we can relate to established for historic development or for the historic district in West Harwich? I know that there was something about the old schoolhouse, and I know funds have been approved there.
There is a Captain's Row website.
Okay.
And in my correspondence, I think that website is there, and that explains the mission pretty well.
It's my understanding that a 501c nonprofit is being formed to administer grant monies and funds, because that is the plan, is to encourage development, historic restoration of that entire corridor. You know, like you said, it's been going on for a number of years now, but there's really been a groundswell of
There has.
interest from state and I guess federal, various architectural colleges now are weighing in and proposing ideas for bringing back the beauty of that landscape, the streetscape for that area. So there's been a lot of interest, and as I said, I think not Friends of, but I'm not quite sure what it's being called, but there is a more legal entity in the process of being created.
And I may have that information right under my nose, but as I say, and I apologize to my own board members, I've been out of town, and a lot of information was passed over to me this evening, but I haven't had the chance to review any of it, so I apologize for that.
It's very possible that nothing's come through yet, because I think it's still in the works. This sort of surprised us all. You know, there was a gentle evolutionary process that was going on, and all of a sudden, this new proposal came forward, which sort of spurred these other developments along a little more quickly than they had been originally intended to be. So it's in the works, as I understand it.
Okay, I thank you. I thank you. Is there anyone else that wants to weigh in on this? Yes, sir.
Brooke Williams, West Harwich, and I think I just wanted to ask a couple of clarifying questions. The first is, it was earlier mentioned that CPC funding is being applied for. That's not the case, but the funding that's being applied for in Harwich is the Affordable Housing Trust Fund money. And in fact, I believe it's $300,000, which is a significant amount in the sense it will really use all of the existing funds in that fund, and then for 2 additional years, the fund which comes from the tower in East Harwich will go into this proposal. I would I think the point that was made by Mr. Bradley, that there is no plan being presented, makes it very difficult for your board to really analyze something, because it's not really possible to feel or to assess how this will impact the historic structure. And I would point out that a number of items have come to light during the process of the Hetch application. The first was that the number of units, housing units, that are in the Chase House. I had written to the Historic Commission in November 25th, noting the town's card, the assessor's card, which indicated it's a duplex. But it was brought to the attention of the Housing Committee, I think, and then confirmed that there are actually 3 housing units in the Chase House. So the point, I think, significance there is that in the demolition delay process, there was never a report from a registered architect or professional engineer. And in Massachusetts, under Chapter 11260L, Section 60L, a single family or a duplex does not require a registered architect or a professional engineer. But if this information is correct, then the question becomes the report that was submitted. In other words, it was not from a registered architect or a professional engineer. I would note, and I'm looking now to find the records of that demolition delay hearings, but I know that the Historic Commission asked for additional information at that time. So it now appears that instead of losing 2 housing units, if the building is demolished, it would be 3 units. And then there is a garage in the back carriage house, which has, according to the town's assessor's card, would be perhaps a seasonal unit. There does not indicate that there is.
It's also in the inventory as a historic structure.
Yes. And so then it was mentioned earlier that this property's been on the market since last spring. But in looking at the listing, Mr. Peterson, I believe, is the listing agent. It's listed as a single-family house. And this has been brought to light that, in fact, it's 3 units of housing, it's unclear to me why the idea was to list this as a single-family house. The adjacent house, which is from the 1950s, is being listed as a 2-family house. So I can't explain. I don't, understand in their marketing approach why they chose to do that. It's not clear to me. But the other element is now what's being proposed is evidently a technique that was used or was attempted in, I believe it was Orleans. I'm not sure. Perhaps the Habitat people can clarify to me. But evidently, they hoped that this technique would result in the preservation of the house. And what I've heard, and I'm not sure they can confirm, that the house eventually was demolished. And so it's unclear to me why a technique that has failed in the past, we would now utilize town money to sort of subsidize or forward currently. The other element is, what can these funds be used for, these affordable housing funds in the town of Harwich? So one thing is rehabilitation and repair. And so because these are housing units, it would seem that the Chase House and, in fact, the duplex, perhaps, would be eligible to be some monies to make improvements if those are necessary. And so I think the other big point is, if we're taking all this money from this particular fund, are there no other needs for housing in all the villages in the town? And perhaps there are historic structures where a study or rehabilitation might be necessary, and all the money is being requested to go to this one element in East Harwich, Pleasant Lake, North Harwich. And so I think there are many questions about this in terms of this approach. What I would think would be a far better approach, respectfully, would be the notion of using some money to have study in terms of this 3-unit Chase House. Are there basic improvements that could be made? Could the site be studied, working with the Cape Cod Commission, working with your body and others, to look at the site and to understand the impacts relative to preserving this needed housing that we have in the villages and in the town, and finding a successful solution. And I would also point out that there is also town-owned land behind this. It's referred to as Willow, but in fact, the majority of that parcel is adjacent to this parcel that they're talking about. And what has been discussed before is the Oak Street development by Hetch. And I don't believe in the Oak Street development by Hetch. There was existing housing that might be impacted with existing tenants, that they're tenants at will, and this is something that's referred to constantly, but they're residents of the town of Harwich. And so I think that there are a number of questions about this, and I think, as I think Mr. Bradley correctly noted, without a plan, it's very difficult to understand what the impacts of this would be. And if people from Mass Historic are looking at the area and willing to come into the area as part of the Captain's Row, it would seem to me that understanding what their input would be, what their thoughts are, would be quite important. And I think that there is a meeting that's coming up with the selectmen, and I think, unfortunately, I missed the second Housing Committee meeting. I had like a stomach bug, and I'm glad I didn't go to the meeting. The kitchen sink paid the price, but in any case, I think the thing is that more public scrutiny of this is very important, with the idea of historic, but also understanding what the housing approaches might be, and whether this approach is perhaps the best one, I think requires more discussion. But certainly having a plan or something that describes what is being proposed would be very important. And I would refer to my letter of November 25th, which Hetch has, and I noted on in terms of the demolition delay, it said, while there are many revisions to the 3 site plans attached, there does not appear to be any evidence of study alternatives to the demolition of the structures, such as slightly relocating the garage to work with the driveway proposal. So I think one of the things that the Mass Historic might look at is ways to integrating the historic structures into whatever is being proposed, and so that might guide further discussions with various groups. And again, I don't know all the aspects of the in and outs and so forth.
And I have to be perfectly honest with you, just not to cut you short, but in actuality, that's just what I want to do. You've given us a lot of information.
Right.
We've gotten a lot of information from Habitat and from Hetch. Of course, a great deal of what you're providing us with is information, much of which is legal, above the perspective that this board has. But what we're concerned, of course, is that we're working with a Captain's Row. We're interested in historic preservation, and wouldn't all of us like to see housing and historic preservation working together? That's what it's all about. And I think this has been a very good informational session. I completely concur with Mr. Bradley. To carry this any further without any, plans and guidelines and so forth and so on, at least what we've done is we've cleared the air. We have an idea of who's going in which direction. Yes, sir.
Oh, may I just
Yes, ma'am.
clarify something again? I just want to clarify again. The only person talking about demoing that building at this time is Brooke. We are not reducing the existing tenants. If Hetch is going to maintain control of those properties or transfer ownership, it's up to those new owners whether or not they're going to keep them as affordable rental units. So I'm just saying that we're not getting rid of these tenants at this time whatsoever at all. It's up to the new owners. Our point is that we are doing our best to try to preserve this historic building in a way that we think will work in the community.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
My name is Robert Doherty, West Harwich, and I think I'm in concurrence with the board and some other people here. It's one thing when the words informational are used, but when you say you envision or you have a vision for the area, I think of seeing something on paper, even if it's rectangles and boxes on the property. And I would think that Habitat, where they've renovated other areas, could go out, take some pictures of what they've done in other towns on the Cape or elsewhere, and show us what this affordable housing is, the low to moderate, a concept, so we can conceptualize what is possible for the area. That's all I'm saying, and I think some of you
I think that's the
would
general
like the
consensus
same.
in the room. I think that we really we don't have enough to go to, we are clearing the air, but we don't have anything to give us any direction as to how you're describing your project and how we're describing what we'd like to see maybe as a historic district. I'm so sorry. Go ahead.
Gail McAleer, 103 Main Street. One of the concerns that I had, and I thought that was a great point too, at one of the previous meetings, I believe it was discussed that I think Habitat had mentioned they have several engineers and architects or people on their staff, and they'd had meetings and they've talked about what could be there, and that's where they came up with the possibility of 4 to 6 units. I mean, it's been discussed. We haven't seen anything on paper, but it has been discussed. I had 2 questions, and again, sort of more in the framework of and the charge of this particular board, is that by one of the things I just heard for the first time tonight is that one of the possible intentions I think I heard was to categorize or classify the entire parcel as a 40B, so that as then a denser subdivision of lots could occur under that 40B, so that when the building envelope that's carved out for the remaining parcel that would support the Judah Chase house and the duplex that exists today and the barn, that the setbacks from those remaining buildings would be reduced to the 40B setbacks, which I think are 10 feet, not 25. So then that encroaches, the Habitat project would encroach even closer to the Judah Chase house. So my concern would be that the remaining building envelope for the historical structures would be very small. You know, we've not seen, again, as Mr. Bradley pointed out, no plans. Where's the existing septic system? Where's the leach field?
Yeah,
Where are all these things? And so if the intent is truly to maintain this historic structure, it has to be appealing, and you know, it's going, certainly if our group is discussing the purchase of it, it would be to maintain it as the existing affordable housing. And there's going to need to be a backyard, there's going to be room for families and children. So, you know, there needs to be room for that remaining structure.
All of which has to go through the purview of the planning board and the Board of Health, and we're just
Exactly.
one small little entity, and we're listening to everything that you
I
have to
hear
say,
you.
but we're not going to make those decisions as far as setbacks and so forth and so on. I think what
Yes.
we're trying to do is, right now, is to just get a place where we can begin.
Yes, thank you.
I thank
I
you.
know it's not an easy charge.
Okay, thank you very much for your input. I thank everyone for their input. At this point in time, I'd like to carry on with some of the information that the board has to finish up business-wise. Is there anyone that hasn't had a chance to say something quickly? Then we'll wrap this up.
I would just say in quick conclusion, our hope tonight was only to advise the board of our general plan in the hope that by investing some money in the back of the property, it would enhance the ability for a developer in the front in concert with the historic. Certainly, we all look forward to actually having the comment from the Mass Historic that is mentioned, and that properly our housing plan will first go before the Board of Selectmen, and that's where, and eventually if lot lines, et cetera, are discussed, that's properly before the Zoning Board of Appeals, which gets full notice, public comment. There's no specific 10-yard setback, 25-yard setback. That would all be before the Zoning Board of Appeals for a full hearing at that time. And we thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for enlightening us. I appreciate it. Okay, back to business of the board. Just before, I want to quickly discuss minutes. We have, because of our issue with our clerk and lack of clerk, and what's been going on in the office, we've fallen behind, and I would just like to ask each board member at your earliest convenience, once all the glitches have been worked out in the building office, so that we can get the information. We have not approved or even put the minutes in any form other than draft for the months of November, December, and January. So this is really important. So, and as I say, it's not our fault. We're a completely volunteer board. We're having difficulty getting the help that we need in the office to get the minutes even down on paper.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes, sir.
What is the status in the office?
Well, between you, me, and the lamppost, I might as well be perfectly honest, I was somewhat accosted when I walked in today by the building commissioner, who asked me if I could please keep my visits to, and the work of the building department to office hours. And I just simply referred to him as to say, I have requested the town administrator and the assistant town administrator for a clerk to help us. We are, as I reiterate, a completely volunteer board, and we cannot possibly carry the workload without some assistance. And now what they're actually trying to do is to cut us back even further, remove Marie from attending our hearings. She's supposed to listen to what Channel 18 is broadcasting, and then she has to put on this headset and try to make out what every person is saying. To be perfectly honest with you, I tried to do that this afternoon, and I could not make any heads or tails out of it.
Well, if you don't use microphones, the recording cannot hear you.
Okay, so if you in the future just don't hear us, just let us know.
Okay, if the board doesn't use their microphones, the people at home can't hear you. The people in the audience have to use that microphone. The recording can't hear you.
Okay.
That's not my
I'm not,
or Marie's fault.
I'm not blaming you. I'm just trying to enlighten the board as to some of the issues that we've been having. And I do concur with you, because there were a number of meetings where these microphones, I see it, I can hear it now, but they weren't working. So we have a few clerical issues on our hands, just to bring you up to date.
Well, does anybody talk to anybody that has any strength to tell the building department what to do?
I've gone so far as to make a request to the,
I mean, this is beyond.
to the assistant town manager, face to face. I went in, I sat down, and I explained our situation. And I was under the, I shouldn't say assumption, but my request was that it would be carried forth to the town administrator himself, and that I would get some kind of a response, which I have not received. And that's where I'm at.
Here we are.
Are there any more, any other items on the agenda that any members would like to bring up at this time? That,
Yep, just
Yes.
Brooks Library.
Okay,
Just
yes,
wanna
ma'am.
Tell you where it is at on the project. And I have a letter, that I think I have enough copies of, that was sent to the library that they presented to the CPC last week, when they went in for a third hearing. And they were awarded $540,000 in CPC funds to start looking at the restoration process for the library. So this is a letter from Paul Holtz, who's an historic architect with the Department of, or the Massachusetts Historical Commission. So, and it just talks about their support for the project. I think that really helped with the CPC proposal. But a couple of interesting things that came out of that. They, the proposal, as we had requested, and Gail wrote a really nice letter, we had requested that they actually make sure that there was funding in any monies that they got to do a research on the actual historic colors, and that everyone agreed to that wholeheartedly. I mean, that was a big part of the discussion. Also, Sean Libby, rather than Ginny or anyone from the library, is going to manage this project. So the next steps on it, as I understand it, there's a two-pronged kind of process. They actually have to go to look at, I think, 3 different architectural firms to manage the architectural aspect, and then there's a different process totally for looking at contractors. So there's no necessity that they're going to actually go with this one firm that we've been working with, or they've been working with, which is the McGinley-Caslow.
Which is the only firm that's provided any information, and I guess a number of us did attend a hearing at the library where they made the presentation, and then there've been other discussions and recommendations beyond that. But
And I
this
would
is very helpful, because until I briefly encountered you this afternoon, I didn't know any of this.
Right. And I would say, you know, that certainly somebody from McGinley-Caslow, would be happy to come and address this group, but I think we should wait until they find out what firm they're gonna use before we have someone come out. I mean,
It would
we
be a
can do
sales
it
pitch
either
on their
way.
behalf
Yeah,
at this
we
point in
could
time.
do it either way,
What
but
do you think, Mr. Bradley?
Yes.
Okay.
So I'll find out what their time frame is for the various steps that they're taking.
That'd be very helpful, Gene. I really appreciate all the work that you've done with the library.
Well, they would have to come before us
Absolutely.
regardless, because we've discussed that with them.
Sure.
And that's a question that I had asked, and I think maybe Gene mentioned it too earlier, but having not been here at this last hearing, I watched you go through the motions. I just couldn't hear what you were saying. Okay. I'm going to make a motion, well, I'm going to ask for a motion to adjourn.
Greg,
Yes.
did you address old business section A, just at the legal opinion, request for response?
No, you're
We
right.
did that
I-
at the last meeting. We had the opinion, and, yeah, and I don't know why it's on old business, because we did,
So A, B, C, and D
But-
discussed at the last one.
A was for sure. But what I think it's still sitting here for is Wendy wasn't she going to go review?
I'll be perfectly honest with you, Ralph. I put this agenda forward without some of the feedback because we were down to the deadline and had to go out. So I figured we'd work it out at the time of the hearing.
So how can we find out what the actual demolition delay legal opinion was?
Well, to paraphrase, I don't have it with me because I was late. But to paraphrase it, we had asked whether if the building changes hands, does that, at the end of the delay period, does the new owner have to reapply? And the answer was no. The demolition delay applies to the building.
Property,
Of the
right.
property.
But that was this attorney's interpretation.
Right.
Didn't we find something in the manual that caused us to question that? Or maybe it was Wendy who questioned it.
Wendy was going to do some,
I always question under a statement
Right.
like that, but that came from the town council.
it did.
But you can always challenge it.
And then always the question was, did the town council have the accurate information about the description of the property and the number of housing units that are in the building and so forth and so? I mean, this has become somewhat convoluted since that time.
It was a generic question as
That's
far as
right.
we didn't get into specifics for a
That's right.
particular property. It was a generic question.
Council has responded in terms of a generic question.
Right.
That's what you've got.
Right.
And it can be changed. It does not make a solution to the
No.
specific.
It's my opinion that it hasn't really answered the question completely.
I agree.
And not enough information was presented at the time the question was asked of council.
Mhm.
Will more information be gathered and presented to council for a more thorough analysis?
That's our direction. Absolutely. Yes.
Maybe.
You're hearing, we have a backlog of information. And when I go into the building commissioner's office and I ask him how come none of the things that we voted on years ago have ever been policed, like neon signs in the historic district and so forth and so on, then he comes forward to me with telling me to, never mind. You get the gist of where I'm going there. I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second?
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.